enough. I am through with silence. Let the howling wind play on my nerve cords as on dry leaves. Let the tapping rain punctuate my skin as on a placid lake. Let the surging waves of the ocean break inside my chest as on the stones and bones of the beach. I am through being lonely. I am through wasting my time protecting my body from the world.
Yeah. What do you think, Howie?
I thought it was very apropos. I thought it worked. It was a good poem.
Yeah. In order to survive in whatever tribe you're born into, certain things are taboo, certain things are unsafe. And just growing up as a child in my family, certain experiences, certain things aren't talked about, and so it's like armoring, it's protecting, hiding, so you only let out what's acceptable. But I don't think it's. I mean, maybe sometimes it's a choice, but I think a lot of it is unconscious, and then we have to dig back in to make it conscious.
As individuals, we're all these creatures that are alone, and we all have these protocols as well. These inner protocols that are our own experience and our own upbringing, and so we have to. And you conform to that, but you're also, sort of fighting the conformity of the world, or you have to fit into this box, or you have to do this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the armor is there.
Inner protocol. That's good. That's a good phrase you came up with there.
Yeah.
And what it separates us from is not just ourselves, right? Part of ourselves, our hearts, whatever, our emotional life. It not only separates us from the experience of others and having compassion and empathy, because we can't reach out if we can't be vulnerable ourselves, but it also separates us from the mystery of the planet, of the mysteries of life, of feeling one with the worlds of creatures and the worlds of plants and the worlds of the elements. We are, and it's that loneliness, it's that making ourselves smaller and armored that creates that loneliness. It doesn't. I don't think it's a given, but that we create it. Yeah.
As poets, are we more open to that? Trying to engage with that other world? Or is that what we are? Is that what we're trying to be? We're trying to engage with it. I feel that myself.
It's a practice, right? I often write for 5 minutes a day, right? So that's a small practice, right? I may do other things that are involved with writing too, but the actual process of allowing the words to come from wherever it's like an inner exploration. It's life folding back on itself. And I think it is that practice of being more open than you usually would. So that day is now different because you did that. And maybe there's a chance some other time during that day or that week where you can get into that space at a time when you would not have been able to, because you've been there.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to what you were saying. So for me, it's generally before I get out of bed in the morning, before I get dressed, before I get washed. I have my notebook by my bed because my mind is still pretty uncluttered. I haven't gotten into the human doing. Right, I'm still a human being, perhaps, and I choose a topic, either from a prompt or from something that happened to me recently, and I'll enter that emotional space, whatever that is, and just write from that. So that's my practice.
Yeah.
And usually it's 5 minutes or less. I don't time myself or anything, but it's usually pretty brief. I'll just write a half a page or whatever, and that's it.
So you said before, as a poet, you're not writing for an audience.
Yeah.
you're writing for yourself, so this is something you want to do yourself. It's hard. So, but if you're not getting it out to an audience, what is it?
Well, that's two different things.
Yeah.
Getting it out to an audience is different than the process of actually getting something on paper. To me, right? And they need to be completely separate, I think. You know, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm writing, I can't be thinking about who's going to read this, who's going to be offended, who's going to like it, right? It totally, I mean, once I go there, I'm lost.
Yeah, it totally wrecks it, right?
I'm totally, yeah, it's totally wrecks the process. It needs to come from a place that's much more spontaneous and immediate.
People are going to use that as a mirror, and it's going to reflect back on whatever they believe,
Project.
or whatever their thing is. It's going to come back on them. They're going to see them. If it's any good, it's going to be read on so many different levels. If the poem's any good.
Art is what happens in the observer. Art is what happens in the observer. I believe that. Yeah. I read the story of this poet, a guy who was imprisoned for writing a poem in a socialist newspaper in like 1915 or something. And it made me think, and he was only in prison for 2 days because somebody came and bailed him out.
Where was this, in this country?
Yeah, in the United States. And it just made me think, like, what poem could I write today that could land me in prison? And should I write that poem?
Pick one.
Yeah.
So to start thinking about how many prisoners, are poets, and poets are prisoners because of what they wrote, the ideas behind the poems. If you are that one that's being very protective and worrisome about the ears that are going to hear it, one, you'll never probably be incarcerated because you've taken care of everything. But at the end of the day, what have you written? It's certainly not a soulful piece that you're going to be proud of.
What I was going to say before was, in this country, you don't hear about writers or poets going to jail. Their books just get banned.
It's just worse.
In other countries, they go to jail, they get tortured, they get killed. But, we have freedom here, so they'll just ban your book.
Which is worse, let's be honest.
The world is so instantaneous now, it's bizarre. And you can say one weird or somebody can interpret something that you say as like all of a sudden you're not welcome anymore. I don't know. And you gotta not think, I think you gotta just not think about that. I think you got it right from your own gut. And if you don't, then there's something cowardly about it.
I write in a journal every day. Every day. So it might be 2 sentences, it might be 4 pages. Just what's going on in my head, or what I did that day, or who I saw, or what I was thinking of. But the last few years have been quieter in my practice than they used to be. Because I'm getting old? I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what it is.
How often do you look back in your journal?
Oh, I mean, I could pull out a journal from last year because I'm curious about where I was at that moment, that day, a year ago, that month or something. I've been keeping a journal since I was in my 20s, so when I left Brooklyn after 50 years, I put all my journals out on the street for the sanitation department.
Did they find it enlightening?
They took it. I don't know what they did with it.
Do you mine the material for poets?
Yeah.
For poems?
Yeah, well, that's what the journal is for.
Okay. So
basically.
You may, that writing the journal may inspire you to write a poem based on something you jotted down or some kind of thing that you have. Interesting.
Yeah. I write with a pen, and it's a small volume, $10 at the bookstore.
It's like a composition book. Sort of.
Yeah, small. It's about this big. It's not huge.
You just write with pen, date, write with pen,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
maybe take it to the computer later if I think there's something there.
so you plumb out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many, like when you threw those out in Brooklyn, how many were there?
Oh man, it was like 20 years old to 50 years old. It was a lot.
So it's like
And
50,
at least 30 books, maybe.
30.
It was good to get rid of that. I didn't go through them. I had changed so radically. I mean, I gave up the job, the marriage, my home, my friends. I moved to the woods. I was living in the Berkshires. I saved one book. I saved the journal from the year my daughter was born.
There you go.
But that's all.
Great.
And did that free you from that past in some ways? And then
I don't
were
think-
able to start a new...
I don't think it freed me,
Yeah,
but it was good to get rid of it.
yeah. Sometimes it's good to let go of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. No.
You get too much junk, and you got to just like clean it up.
But it can't free you. I mean,
Right,
you
but
can't throw away your past. But it was good to cut the tie, I guess.
Do you have a poem in there that you plumbed from your journals?
I think probably all of them.
Oh, nice.
Fall, spring, unaccountable. Passover today, and observant songbirds migrate north. Where I was raised, it was de rigueur to call me Christ killer. At last night's Zoom Seder, the 4 questions vibrated on smartphones. My first fling was Arlene, as I her uncountable. Even bald, she confided, our high school music teacher. Seated in the first row, first seat, directly in front of Mrs. Edelman's desk, I passed algebra. Stray white hair sprouting from facial moles, a few threading her ample cleavage. 1 year later, Mrs. Westerberg failed me in geometry. That was the winter I stole a friend's key and broke into his home, pilfered loose change, a romance novel, and lingerie. Signs were apparent. During the ritual meeting, no mention was made of a 9-year-old Mexican girl drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande, or 26,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza. A revered poet wrote, "We enjoy our lives because that's what God wants." I want to know how he knew what his God wanted. Egret plumes once sold for twice the price of gold. I'm forever grateful to Arlene. Walk it home.
Yeah. Wow.
Powerful.
A lot of lines from the journal in there.
I was going to say that you could feel that you were mining some stuff from something that you had thought or wrote or some history there, and you had the details.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me.
And I strung them together like a string of pearls, but some of them were, messed up pearls and whatever.
So that speaks to your process as a poet in a way.
Well, yeah, I write in so many different ways.
Yeah,
that's
one way.
Yes, sure.
So I guess our practice is also the performance too, in some ways.
Yeah.
This is one of the ways we bring our work to people, to an audience, and I think we're all sort of practiced at this. So it's a performance, but it's a reading. So it's to try and reach people with that is an art as well, in a way.
It's a separate skill set.
It's a separate skill set.
I feel suddenly you're an orator.
Yeah.
An orator is not a poet. A poet is not, and some people can be both and some people can't be both.
Yeah.
Some people read other people's poems, amazing, right? But they don't write, maybe themselves.
Yeah.
That's always baffled me.
So now I write most days, but it's not per se a daily practice, but it's most days. And being retired, but also before I was retired, I would write most days. But now I have time. Generally speaking, I have time to contemplate and let things percolate. And they often come to me at night when I wake up, early morning, and then I won't be able to get back to sleep because there's something there that I have to like get up and at least jot some things down. Otherwise, I'll try to remember it, I'll be lazy, and I'll be wait till the morning, and then a lot of it will be lost, what I had. But I'll think of something, I'll think, well, this is freaking brilliant, I gotta go out and write this down. And of course, the next day, when you look at it, it's not necessarily brilliant, but it may be the seed of something that you plant and make something out of. And so that's part of my practice. The other practice is you know, writing every day, sometimes for hours. Sometimes I'll sit there for something, but I like to get at least something down in one sitting that's at least a more or less, not a finished piece, but at least it's something I can work with, right?
Cool.
And that's how I do it. And it comes from the best stuff I find comes from sort of a less conscious level, or a clear mind, or an open mind to what you're doing. That's what I do. I got a piece here, it's a strange piece, and I want to read it for you.
Okay.
Oswald. Leftover left right arm hangs hung down, dog-eared over love-lost romance. Trog, frog, log lopped off, flung out the window, laughing. One means one, not one, of whom I cannot say. Leather-bound witness to the dark acid, on drugs to be happy, not well. Balance, fools. Practice, practice, practice. There is no such thing as a perfect hell. This should have been Chicago. This should have been Frank, holding Charlie up to the mustard man. But that freak couldn't hold his cookie to the fire stick. So I roll my own. From the papers in my pocket and the green skunk in my nose, slithers into my brain on his snakeskin boots and long black coat. If wanderer be not Z, your chance be wasted if he makes the turn under the tunnel on a pack of Newports and a Jello pudding pop clean getaway, and all Fat Arblet can say is, hey, 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 here he comes. You just keep driving. Grip line cuts your fingers into ribbon, rusty hooks in your gullet dissolve into rust, and 3 bullets sear the sun. Blow bubbles of blood splatters across her pink face, pillbox hat flying. There were the Russians, Zeke. Turnbuckle Rose to your mother Jack, Castro convertible, Roland Lincoln black suicide, and all the windows point to the 6th floor, and the man with the umbrella gives the signal. And now your name is bronze plaque. And Dallas, Mexico, Cuba keep calling. And your young wife be cuck to the fuck of something you never saw coming. Red Ruby with his long nose, pointing fire, shooting Vina Cava, which without you cannot live. So mix them all like drinks, down the cubes and all the streaks, until it becomes time. And I took my treason and my warped jarhead mind into your school book of imagined hate. For I was there alone in the grass, all alone on that knob knoll of grass, in the secret service of a dream. I would have gotten away with it too, if not for J.D. and all those nasty robots, and their stupid blue friends who punched my ticket. And then this movie would be a maniacal wonder of Boffo Treat instead of Patsy. So,
Oswald.
wow, freaking Oswald.
So I thought about Oswald, the assassin, but I also thought of, there was some kind of reference that made me think of acid.
Yeah.
Because the good acid was Oswald acid.
Yeah.
Sunshine was Oswald acid. So I was trying to put the 2 things together.
Was it Oswald or was it Owsley?
Oh, it was Owsley, yes,
Yeah.
right, I'm sorry.
But I thought that too.
Okay, wow. How old were you when Kennedy was assassinated?
I was 5 years old. Or actually, I was 5 years old.
Oh, old enough to hold a rifle, huh?
I was old enough to, and it marked me in a weird way. I mean, like anything would a kid, right? And so this past year was the 60th anniversary. And I,
Right.
and then I read some stuff about, sort of the conspiracy idea, the Warren Commission thing, and then all this stuff jumbled up in my brain, and I just let it roll. I just let it roll. I didn't think about it. I didn't stop to say, oh, I can change this word or do this or that.
Would you think about doing that later, though? Or no? That's it. You're finished with that.
This, I'm done with it.
Okay.
I don't think I can do anything else with it.
Okay.
I think it's a huge mess.
I think he's
But
wrapped
it's-
up in a nice little bow.
But it's like, I mean, it feels a little bit like Picasso, like
Right.
a Picasso painting
Yeah.
or something, where like the nose is over there, and the teeth are over there, and there's some sex organs over here. But like you look at it like, whoa, that's really quite a composition. It's kind of covert, and it's confessional, right? It's like a lot
That's
of
the
stuff
word.
going on.
This thing where Ruby shot Oswald, and it was just like all over the place. It was everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. And it's like I thought it was this great thing. Yeah, they killed that guy. Yeah, and my father's like, this
No.
isn't good. This is a
Now
bad.
we'll never know.
This is as bad as what just happened with the president. He says in a way. This tells you that there's some other thing that's going
Force.
on. And all this Warren Commission stuff. And I read a lot of stuff about
Cuba,
it because it was the
Russia.
60th, and it just jumbled inside. And there's references all over the place in this thing.
Yeah.
It's like something that was thrown at me.
Yeah.
And I had to just let it out. So
Yeah.
that's the weirdness of my process right there. A part of it.
Yeah.
So anyways.
In receiving a poem, is I ask, what's the emotional center of this poem? Not how is it formulated, not, like you said, picking it apart, but what's the emotional center? Like, what are you left with after you read this poem? And there's no right answer necessarily, but I feel like that's a good example, right? This is not a linear poem that tells a narrative or that is to be is to be followed super clearly, but it packs an impact, right? An emotional impact, which is that this is a violent, far-reaching event that impacted history, and you get that from that poem. It's big. This is a big traumatic experience that is woven, right, and braided with many different elements. And so when you're gone, you're like, wow, I heard that poem today. And it's like it's gonna change my day.
Yeah.
Right. Process really quick. I have no time. Absolutely zero. And if I get to know you guys better, I'll explain why.
Okay.
But I don't have that chair and desk time. I've written pieces over many years that I've kind of an epic medieval poem that started in 2020 that just now got into an audiobook. 20 years of just trying to get something to the finish line. So what I do a lot is just kind of fabricate my process by judging by who's in the room, or judging by the atmosphere of the room, the temperature of the room, and just hoping one of these poems that I'd love to put down on paper will kind of be entertaining. Thus writing more so for the crowd versus self.
Now I know you probably better than these guys do, and I know that what you generally do is you keep the poem in your head, and then you have like the oral tradition of poetry. That is more in many ways I see that as more your tradition. But you'll keep the poem in your head, and then you'll read it, then you'll perform it to the audience. That's
Right.
what I've seen you do many times.
Yeah. That's what I'm most comfortable with.
And we're reading it off the piece of paper, and you're reading it out of your head.
Because that paper is a hurdle. It's a stumbling block. My vision varies. My mind wanders. I want to trade that S for an apostrophe and then an S, as I'm delivering.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't do this anymore because it's been too many hiccups instead of a nice.
But you're like the bards of old in some ways, in that you bring that oral tradition to it, the spoken word tradition, more than we do, more than Howie or Michael or myself.
And that said, that's because I feel like there's no way you can make a mistake. I'll do this for the sake of the camera. I'll do a little piece about what I get as soon as I hear the word lonely. It's such a one-sided word to me that I have trouble even branching out with anybody else's thought of loneliness is. I would find you kind if you could help find me. I am right here, hiding from thoughts that haunt me. They guide me deep into the land of the lonely. The lonely, the lonely. I am right here with lonely. And as ever so, never some, when you're hiding right here with no one. With no one. I am right here with no one. And there are laws in this land, and they are so controlling that no one enters in. That there is light, but it is dim. It's where the air is so thick, you walk like you swim. It's where your card is dealt, and you did not win. No, you can never win. Not in the land of the lonely. The lonely. You are right here with lonely. So could you find me and tie me to a plane and cut me free high up in space and let me smash somewhere where I can trade this mirror for one that has a face, that has eyes and lips that with fingers I can trace, that has ears that can hear me when I tell them about the horrors of this place, where no one enters in, where there is light, but it is dim. It's where the air is so thick, you walk like you swim. It's where your card is dealt, and you did not win. No, you can never win. Not in the land of the lonely. The lonely. We are all right here with lonely. And it is ever so, never some, when you are hiding right here with no one. With no one. We are right here with no one.